Well, welcome to the team.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to the team, Anne, because you're the newest member of the Robbie support staff.
Yes.
I don't know
The
what to
Robbie
call it.
support group. Let's just call it that.
Well,
Let's
it's like my pit crew. I just keep
yes,
riding around, riding around, riding around. And I like pull in, and you're like,
this crew. I love it. I will change your tires any day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I
I
will
need
change
it.
your tires.
I
I
need
will.
it because life is moving fast. Business growth has been amazing. I knew I needed some different kinds of support. And I actually want to tell a quick story of how I even found you. And shout out to Scott Stratton. We
Scott.
gotta we gotta tag him on this. In
Yes.
fact, I'm gonna drop a note in. I don't know how to do this while I'm talking to you. I gotta tag Scott because we're talking about him right now. Scott Stratton. He commented on some of the stuff that you were doing, and because of that, I saw your posts and I was sort of sucked in and I liked it. And then a week later, he commented, and I'm like looking at your profile, and I'm like, I just looked at her profile last week. Wait a second. And I reached out to you, and I don't do that. I don't blindly reach. I feel it's kind of icky, like a lot of the ways people do. I mean, it can be done in a genuine fashion. So
Well, and it's I love that. I love that you would say that it's icky because it's actually super relevant to the conversation we're going to
yeah.
have today. And I will let you know that you are not at all icky. I have been unfortunately LinkedIn is rife with icky outreach,
I know.
especially towards AFABs or female identifying individuals, right? And so it is rife with icky. I am familiar with the icky. You are not at all
I
icky.
know, I know. I think I mentioned my wife. Like I
You
tried to
did
like be as
before.
non-icky as possible. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. It was
You
so
were
funny.
very, very not icky, which is part of the reason why we hit it off. And I'm just so glad to be part of your pit crew, honestly.
Yeah.
It's such a fun thing to do. And I just because it's part I don't know, it's like it's part business strategy, it's part marketing strategy, it's part copywriting, it's part it, but all of it is fun. All of
It's
it is
all good stuff. And so I had a lot of really big ideas that I've been trying to figure out how to articulate, not just in words, but in writing. And that was one of the key reasons I was drawn to working with you. You are a great writer. I love your style. You're a great storyteller. And I'm excited to sort of be supporting your own growth and what you're doing. So it was just sort of fun to find ways to collaborate.
yes.
The thing that we want to talk about today is actually related to the work that you do. So what was the spin you put on it? We were just talking about this a moment ago.
The spin that I put on it was humanizing marketing or human. My whole vibe, like anybody who follows me, is it knows that my whole thing will be a better human, right? Be a
Be a
better
better
human.
human.
It's be a better human, but it's really about creating human centric places
Right.
everywhere and putting the humans at the center of things. Now, my thing is putting humans at the center of corporate spaces, of workspaces, creating those human centered workplaces. But I am also by trade, by profession, if you will, a marketer. And I've been doing marketing for a very long time, almost 2 decades, which is just bananas. And I always find that when you put the human being at the center of any marketing, it becomes less about the icky outreach and the gross kind of like, buy my thing. And it becomes a lot more about how can I meet you where you are? How can I provide value? How can I provide education? How can I build trust? And when you do all of those things, then it doesn't become about selling at all. You don't need to sell when you put love and trust and value and education at the center. Then it just becomes a relationship where eventually somebody goes, you know what? I would love to have this thing that you're selling because I trust you as a human being. I
Right.
trust you as an organization. And but that's exactly why we're talking about this because one of the things that I love about collaborating with you is that that is actually a humongously driving force in
Oh, so much.
everything that you do. And I actually, everybody should know that I pushed Robbie to do this live. Robbie did not want to do. Robbie's like, I don't want to do this live. I'm like, you
Well,
must,
yeah, it
must.
wasn't my first thing. I love video. I'm happy to do a live, but you're right. I need to find new ways to keep talking about this, about basically how to not treat people like cattle. Which
How
is probably
to not treat people like cattle. We don't.
that
And
deserves to be in the comments. So what I mean by this is, and as everyone knows, this is really about how to design a marketing plan that is not a tight sales funnel. And I think that there's reasons that sales funnels exist, but for the kind of folks that I work with, we don't have enormous email lists. We don't have budgets that allow us to do like all the Facebook ads and everything else. We are working with individual people to grow our business, to grow our brand, and grow our influence. And those
Mhm.
individual people deserve to be treated like the humans that they are. And
Right.
the cattle reference, this is a strange connection here that I have. But when I was thinking about this, Temple Grandin designed much more humane pathways for cattle to go as they were being herded to slaughter. And even though it's a more humane system, it doesn't mean the cattle want to go where they're headed. Like, it's
Right.
ultimately not good for them. And while we can design a sales funnel that maybe treats people a little bit better, I kind of think that ultimately the people in the funnel deserve to have agency
They
about whether or not to keep engaging.
That they do. They deserve, to use a term that you and I have bandied about in private conversation, is people deserve to choose their own adventure. People deserve to choose where they are going to engage with you, when they are going to engage with you, how they are going to engage with you. And you will find that in some cases, some people really want the, for example, initial offer that's typically lower cost. They want that introduction. Other folks know immediately they want to work with you. I'm just going to go ahead and pay for the bigger offer because it makes sense for me. But if you put somebody in a funnel and you force them to follow that path, you're essentially taking away agency. And again, this is a topic that is super important to me because a lot of what I talk about in a workspace is you've got to give people agency of authenticity. You have
Yeah.
to. That's the only way that people feel safe. And the thing of it is, that's not something that just applies in corporate spaces and in leadership. It applies to everything that you do, especially in your case, Robbie, I think, because what you are actually teaching people, giving people, is the education on how to build their enterprise, their business. They're taking that next step, that next chapter. Those are the folks you work with. You work with women and men, but primarily women in their 50s who are essentially being like, I'm going to take agency and ownership of my life, take that next step, put
Right.
out that service, that product, build a life that I control fully. And to take away the agency of where they can choose to come in, that's almost antithetical.
Well, it's funny. Years ago, I got to know someone who ran for city council in Boston, and I, at the time, was teaching a college course, and he came to speak at my class about building a campaign. And he was talking about how he had set up the campaigns so he could still coach his kids' little league, and how he trusted in the team that he had built so that he can leave while decisions were being made, and he can come back and find out what people decided was the best path forward. And he said, because whether I win or not, we've built something. And if I win through any means necessary and then say I'm going to govern in a different way, I won't have attracted the people to me who will help make that happen. And I
Correct.
think similarly, I don't want to hoodwink people into working with me. Then they don't do the work because they never chose to do the work, and they don't get the results they want. And then the word of mouth is Robbie can't help anyone, right? Like, that's not the
Right.
results I want.
Right. Well, it's the law of attraction in my book. It's you put. One of the things that I say constantly, and maybe I don't say that much in this sphere, but I do say it in my personal life a lot, which is the universe gives you back what you put in it, right? And this applies to just about everything that you do. And in your case, you want to attract a very specific kind of person. You want to attract somebody who is passionate, who is legitimate, who is driven, who is entrepreneurial. And the way to do that is by putting that energy out yourself. And a lot of that also has to do again with agency, with choosing your own adventure, with deciding where you want to start and how. And that's because that's what these folks are doing. That's who you want to work with. The only way that you can attract that to yourself is by putting that energy out. And I think that's one of the most brilliant things that you do. And it's also why I love so much the mountain that you the mountain
We got to talk about this mountain analogy. First, I
Please
got to tell you
do.
that the word hoodwink, the word hoodwink works well here. This is Paya who's hanging out with us. Paya has been my longtime assistant, virtual assistant since February 2020. Hey,
Okay.
Paya, thank you for being here and
Yes.
capturing the hoodwink language that we're using here.
Think.
So, yes, I have been trying to think about how do I articulate this path since it's not a clear funnel. And I will talk about the mountain, but I want to tell you that I had this other realization about where this comes from for me. So I am my background is actually in nonprofit and specifically fundraising development, running fundraising events, doing donor engagement work, major gifts. And a sales funnel squeeze process would not lead to donations. People will not feel good. They would not, first of all, it might lead to a donation, but it would not lead to recurring gifts, loyalty, because people would not feel good in the process. They'd feel squeezed, which is what we do when we give people a limited time amount, must respond by this point, and bonuses are leaving and vanishing, and must act fast, and all this high pressure, and like must buy on the phone. You might get a gift once if you did that, but that would not lead to a relationship where they were a friend for life to the organization. So I've always had this idea in my head around building a ladder of engagement. And so the ladder of engagement and the mountain are very similar processes in the sense that you sort of like, you're constantly inviting people up to the next level. So for me, let's visualize that mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a community around the base. That's the village that lives around, that's sort of gathered around the base of this mountain. For my organization, that would be the Content and Connection Club, because it's a way in, it's $25 a month, and you're kind of hanging out near the base of the mountain. I mean, there's still the world at large around that, which is my whole network, my social media following, my email list. But these are people who've chosen to be just that little bit closer to the start of that journey with me up to the summit. And so, through the club, they get access to lots of resources, a community, every Friday, virtual happy hours, Q&A calls, my personal attention and response via email, calls, etc. So that's sort of the entry level point. But not everyone wants that. Some people are like, I'm so many clubs, so many communities, I don't want more email. They know they want to just come right in and go to a program. Well, they don't have to do the club first. That's why it's not a funnel. Right? The funnel would be, you are required. And as a donor, people sometimes felt like they were being put through the paces, and they're like, we're in step 4 now. Okay. When do I get to write the check? It's like, no one wants to feel like they're part of like a system. They want to be treated like a person.
Listen, nobody wants to be part of 12 Steps of Robbie.
Right.
Nobody wants to be a part of the 12 steps. I mean, listen, I kind of do. I love you. I will do the 24 steps of Robbie. But to your point,
that's for you.
That's for me. That's for me.
Right.
And I also say, while we're on this topic of the Content and Connection Club, I actually really, really enjoy. I'm part of it. I was actually a founding member because, number one, I love Robbie, but also because I find that content really helpful. And to me, one of the most valuable things about the Content and Connection Club is the content, yes, but the connection to me was the crucial part of it. I really love being part. Networking has become something that I just love. I absolutely love to do it. If you told me that that was going to be where I was at mentally after the pandemic, I was like, let's talk to more people. Maybe it's because it's online. I don't know. COVID can't catch me over Zoom. But I really love that networking aspect of it, because the times that I've gone to the No More Bad Zoom happy hours or any sort of event like that, I always end up coming out with really terrific connections. And to me, that was worth the money, because I'm like, this is great. This is a dedicated group of people. And because I trust you, Robbie, and I know that you actually attract, again, we go back to the attraction, right? You put some very specific things out there, you attract very good things back. And so the folks who come to these events are actually really great. And I've made some really exceptional connections through stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, because even though I am the type of person that typically will hop right to whatever program I want, I love being in the village.
Yeah, the village is pretty cool. And I agree. The people I've attracted the last 2 years of hosting this Friday event, great people. In fact, it was sort of the impetus to want to build it into a thoughtful community and not just people who come in and out each week. I wanted to create a space where they can connect with each other, support each other, share each other's wins, ask for advice. I love this comment here from Paya talking about people are very self-aware. They know what they want. I think that, it's not up to me to decide what knowledge people need or what they need to hear or learn in order to make a buying decision. It's not up to me. I give people the options, but they get to decide how much they need before they opt in. I've had people write me a $25,000 check after a phone call. Right. They saw me online. They got to know what I was about. They thought I could support them. They saw my prices online. They got on the call. We talked about how I can support them. And at the end, it was like, is this a fit? And they said, yes. And I said, do you have any questions? They said, no, I already saw your prices. And then I was like, what do you want to do? 6 months or a year? And they were like, a year. So it's like, I know that person didn't feel the need to go through all the hoops. Right. So we have the village, then we have what I'm calling the, let me see, I had to call, base camp. And
Yeah,
if you want to see a really great visual, Pay will drop in the Twitter thread that she created. Oh my gosh.
I love
She
that Twitter.
created this beautiful Twitter thread with like eye-catching gifs that I thought her gift game was like top notch.
On point.
So we have base camp, and base camp is where I'm providing a 2-hour session to give you a little taste of what it's like to work with me, for you to get a little sense of what it's like to work on this particular project. And there's both a money investment, but there's an investment of your effort. And I want to get clear on that, because it's not about just showing up to like a webinar. I don't think webinars on their own are going to be what gets people going. Too many people are doing what I call entrepreneur TV. One weekend they go to one person's 3-day webinar workshop thing, and they go to someone else's 3-day, but in between they're not really doing the work. And so to get into the Wake Up Your Network pop-up mastermind, you need to both pay the $200, but also, I mean, more importantly, you have to do the pre-work. And the pre-work is where you're actually building your likely prospect list from your existing network of folks who already know, like, and trust you. But I'm sure you're going to run into questions and problems and mind games as you're trying to do that, which is all that you can bring to the 2-hour session. We will mastermind with a small group of no more than 12 people. That's the other thing. And people talk about masterminds, and then they say, oh, masterminds, you show up and there's 80 people in the room.
I keep thinking of Tony Robbins, and whenever he has a mastermind, and it's like an online group of 1,000 people, and you're like, what's happening? This is not a mastermind.
Yeah. So when I say mastermind, I'm meaning between 4 and 12 people,
Right.
very intimate, very focused on what you need. That is a way in. I don't want to say it's the way in. It's a way into working with me.
Well, and you know why? And let me say this. You know why I actually really love this. And again, this is why it's so interesting. I love business strategy. One of my
Mm.
favorite things is business strategy with humans at the center. And one of my favorite things about I just love everything about how you've set this up. Just to me, this is the epitome of, I'm forever preaching about education and value, education and value, education and value. That needs to be the driving force in marketing always. And you've done that with this. But my favorite thing about the 2-hour pop-up mastermind is that it is essentially almost like the kick in the pants that you need to get started, because so much of what starting a business is, or selling a product, or putting a service out there. I know this because I have services. I do coaching, I do speaking. So much of it is just taking that leap, and a lot of what keeps us from taking that leap is fear. Is fear or uncertainty, and they're different. They're different. Fear is, oh my God, will I fail? Uncertainty is, I don't know where to go. And I feel that the 2-hour pop-up mastermind actually helps address those two in a very specific way. It takes the fear out of, oh my God, will I succeed? Well, let's give you the tools to actually almost definitively know whether you will or not. And it's really interesting. And then I don't know where to start. Actually, yes, you do. Here's how you start, right?
Literally, step by
Literally,
step.
and it's one of my favorite things because it takes your book, which I've read and I love, and I'm actually applying to a lot of the stuff that I do, but it basically takes your small list, big results, and essentially codifies it into a fire starter, right? Like, what is the spark? What's the spark? It doesn't teach you everything. The pop-up mastermind does not teach you everything. But for a lot of folks, like for example, for me, this would be the only thing that I would probably need, because then I'd be like, oh, okay, I know what to do, and then I get to go. I might stop there. But I love that it takes away the two primary things that would stop somebody to do a bit, to start a service, do a business, whatever, is takes away uncertainty and takes away the fear, because it gives you the tools to be able to address both. And that to me is the crucial element of that. And he does it all in 2 hours, which is just, to me, I'm like, that's magic.
Yeah, I
It's
think that people can read a book. I mean, the book itself is useful, right? It has all the information right here, all the how. I'm literally giving it to you.
great.
But reading a book and taking action, different. And so I want to give people a container, a time-bound container with which to start taking action on the strategies in the book. And as I mentioned earlier, smalllistbigresults.com is where you can go to get the Big Results Toolkit, which has all these, workbooks and worksheets, and there's even a 30-minute training. It's like everything you need. If you want to DIY, go for it. You're not my ideal client if you don't need any help at all, but I still want to support you. You
Right.
might discover further down the line that you're not quite sure what happens next. And then you might want to jump into one of my later programs because you've done a lot of work on your own, because you are a kind of person who would prefer to do that. And I get it. I want to give you the tools to design your own adventure on your entrepreneurial journey. So that's the base camp. And then we have the exploratory excursion. The
Yeah.
exploratory excursion. I love the names I came up with for this.
See, you do this, and this is what happens, Robbie, by the way. When you come up with these things, this is when I get like messages at 11 o'clock at night. You're like, I came up with a thing. I'm like, so this is great. But this is what happens when you do things at 11 o'clock at night.
It's true. I am definitely not a morning person. I am a night owl for creativity. So
Yes.
the exploratory excursion is it's a mix of training, workshop. It's a 1-day experience. It's 6.5 hours long. It's still max 12 people, but a lot of the time is you in small groups, in breakout rooms, taking action. So it's a little training, a little review, definitely lots of time for Q&A, but it's specific exercises that are taking place in these small groups. You're getting ideas from each other about what they're doing, how they're doing it, how do you design this? So the end of the pop-up mastermind is that you will have this clear list. And then of course you start to have questions about like, what am I going to do with this list? So part of the pop-up mastermind is to give you some ideas of what happens next. Coming to the 1-day workshop, which is called Idea to Offer Workshop, is where you're really starting to say, okay, I'm getting clarity on the kind of idea I have, and now I've got to figure out exactly how to talk to this list of prospects and referral partners. And you want to really start writing some scripts, some templates, and we want to give you feedback on that. And everyone always, this happened in fundraising too. I remember teaching fundraising, and people would say, okay, I get it. I'm no longer like super scared of fundraising, but there's this person I have to ask and I'm really nervous. I'm like, why would you start with that person that you're most anxious about talking to? So similarly, let's get some wins. Let's get some easy wins in. And so designing a path forward, because the goal is that you talk to maybe 20 or 30 people in the next 6 to 12 weeks. Going forward, when you repeat this process, you can do it in 3 to 6 weeks. But initially, it'll take you a little longer to kind of feel your way through. You don't have the templates yet. You don't have the confidence yet. But if you want to move to the point of having a pilot, you need to have some research calls. You need to talk to people
Right.
who are the people you're trying to help. Because that's one of the things I've seen, Anne, is that so many times people build what they think is the perfect solution to a problem that people have, but they don't invite input from the people who need the help. And so they design it, but not quite what people are expecting. It's either like not the right method of delivery. It's like a mastermind, but they need a training, or it's too many weeks, or it's at a higher level than, people need sort of an entry level of understanding. And I understand why it happens. We're experts. We see the big picture, but our prospects are not experts. They don't see that. Their problems in their mind exist, but they're like, I call them small p problems, because I mean, you might call it a symptom, but they wouldn't. They'd call it a problem. So I just, again, like human centered, I don't want to call it a symptom because they would never say that. It's a
Right.
problem. It's just not the big problem, the big P problem. So I hope that through this process of being this workshop, you start to really believe in the offer that you want to build, believe in the effort of reaching out to people. Now, I have something I want to put out there. If you spend the $200 with me and or the $500 with me to be in these 2 group programs, these sort of like little nibbles, I'm then going to match that money if you decide to continue with me in the 12-week program. And the 12-week program is the Idea to Offer incubator, where you're in 6 sessions with a small group, again, max of 12 people. And it's a mastermind where you're coming every single session. You're sharing what your questions are. You're sharing your wins. You're sharing your what your plans are, commitments for the next 2 weeks, so that we can hold you to it and ask you about what you took action on. And it's just to help you move to the process until you get to the end and you're ready to actually be piloting. You've had enough calls with enough people. You've tested this idea. You've validated it. You've got the language figured out. And now you're prepared to actually launch the pilot. And for some people, that's what they need help to get to. And then they're off to the races. The pilot, that part is what I'm calling the Summit Strategy Group. That's what the 12-week program is. It's the summit. It's the people who are ready to get to the top of that mountain, right? They've
Right.
explored, they've gone to the base camp, they've done some exploratory excursions. They're now like, I want to be there. And it's easier to get to the top of a mountain in a group than by yourself. So they're committed to being in a group together, support each other. Here's what happens when you get to the top of the mountain. The horizon is completely different than it was when you were in the village. So when you're in the village and maybe you were like, maybe you're walking around the village and you went into the gift shop and you found my book
I love that
and you
gift
got
shop.
excited about the idea of climbing the mountain. You were like, oh, you're reading about the stories of other people who did, and you're reading about the process. You're imagining maybe that could be you one day. And so you stick around the village to start planning your trip. And you get to the base camp and you get to the exploratory stage. And now you're part of this thing. But when you get to the top of the mountain, what's possible completely changes. You realize you're surrounded by a mountain range filled with other summits that you might want to climb to. That is where I think having a guide or a coach or a mentor comes in. And
Right.
I'd love you to jump in. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I love that because I am a coach. And so I know exactly what this can do for folks. And I'll use a little bit of my own examples from the folks that I work with. I also have multiple programs, right? And some folks come in and they do my group coaching program where what they really want is just minor guidance and then some group feedback and then potential inclusion into the Slack channel so that they can talk things through. But then I also have the folks who come to me and they're like, no, I need leadership help or I need management help for my own specific, because it boils down to my own specific needs, my own specific situation. And that's where they have been trying to do it on their own for a while. And a lot of them have figured out a lot of what they need to do. But what they benefit from is that external viewpoint of, I am a completely unbiased observer. My only goal is to make your life clearer, more empowered, and more informed. And so now let's drive that into that is my job for you. And so I think that's what you do so well in that one-on-one coaching, which is I do it for leadership, you do it for business, for new chapters, for entrepreneurial endeavors, and having somebody to talk. Because here's the other thing, and I think a lot of folks forget this when they start, or they don't even think about this. Entrepreneurship can be a very lonely
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
So lonely. And I didn't realize this until I started doing my own business endeavors. And it was particularly stark because I also have an office job. I have a corporate job. And so there it's very collaborative. There I have lots of people. I have an incredible team, an incredible company, incredible leader. I have all of these things. And then when I do my own stuff, it's just me in this office with an occasional dog or two just like snoring next to me, but it's just me in my head doing a thing. And that's where I have a coach of my own. And so that's where I have found that it is so helpful to have somebody who isn't necessarily telling me what to do, but is basically, to your point, they're guiding me through a decision-making process. They're asking me the questions, they're providing feedback, they're reflecting things back to me like, what do you think you should do? What makes you, and just having that kind of like the way that we're doing this via conversation, you and me, as
Yep.
opposed to just having a live by yourself talking about stuff. When you have a conversation with someone else whose only focus is your best interest and your empowerment, clarity, and information, it making decisions that are best for you actually becomes so much easier. It's so interesting. You need somebody else to reflect your best decisions for you. But it's
Yeah.
helpful. It's why I love number one coaching and also why I love being coached.
Yep.
Like I love it. Like it's just my favorite thing. It's just, but yeah, to me, that's to your very great analogies. When you look out at the mountain, like you get to the summit, you have two things. You have an immense amount of clarity because now you can see. You don't see the villages, you don't see the people, you don't all you see are all the peaks. But oh my God, there's so many peaks.
Yeah. And that can actually be a different level of overwhelm, but you
Yeah,
can't know what you need until you get to the next stage of something,
correct.
right? You can't even foresee. And I'm trying to create opportunities for people to step into a community, ask the questions, get the clarity, make the commitments they need, see the progress, taking the action so that they can keep moving forward. Now, some are going to read the book and start taking action and maybe they'll jump into the 1 day, maybe they'll jump into the 12 week and they'll just like go right for it. But I also know that the number one sort of connection to my client success, number one factor, is their commitment to doing the work. So rather than dangling a bonus that will go away at a certain point, which, as a little bit of an aside, it really preferences people who have access to capital. It
Correct.
gives and a support community. Like, the people who get a quick yes from their partner and have the money in the bank
Mhm.
can immediately say yes to, the several $1,000, coaching package. And the people who need to kind of, pull things together, maybe their friend circle doesn't really get it, they don't really know who to ask for advice, they will delay and that bonus will go away, which means the people who probably need whatever that bonus is that will help them get the results won't have access to it. So rather than do that, which to me isn't equitable, right? It isn't sort of center this around their experience. I'm
Correct.
actually building bonuses in differently. You might consider my 2-hour program, my 1-day program, and even my 12-week program all bonuses of working with me one-on-one, because the money spent in those 3 group programs
Mhm.
will be matched if you decide to continue with me one-on-one to work as in a coaching relationship. So you could just skip ahead and say, I want to sign up to a 6-month coaching package, or you can try any one of or all of these group experiences to
Mhm.
flush out your thought process a little bit, both what it'd like to work with me, but also how do you feel about this process? I mean, because I am very much committed to a certain process of you doing this, right? The
Mhm.
outcome is not up to me. How much effort is really not up to me either. It's your business, but I do have a process. So if you like my process, you like working with me, and you feel you have some traction, then in some ways, saying yes to these different low cost sort of options will give you the sort of sense that you really have something worth investing the larger investment of working with me one-on-one, right? Like, I think some people want that stepping stone.
I think it's super helpful also because to me, again, I go back to the fact that entrepreneurship is very it's just it's a single person unless you have a founder or a co-founder, but many of us don't, right? Many of us are just, I have an idea, I want to do a thing, I want to help people in an XYZ way, right? And we all start from a place of, I'd like to get paid doing something that that I love, that I create, that I own on my by myself and on my own. And it's having that, it comes so fraught with uncertainty, and it comes fraught with, what do I do next? Like, am I doing the right thing? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Should I do more of it? Should I do less of it? And I think the stepping stone for a lot of folks is incredibly helpful, because you start off with, this is what I do now, this is what I'm doing next, this is what I'm doing after, this is great. It doesn't feel overwhelming. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Yeah.
So the ladder engagement model is also been helpful to me, because you do want to invite people in, but the even my book cover, initially the graphic designer had put what looked really like a funnel, like a very V shape, and I
Yeah.
was like, ooh, no, not interested in that. And so we designed this. And it's kind of almost like a Rorschach test, how people respond to this design. But it is sort of from here to it's one to many. It's about
Right.
growth. It's about people sort of moving up into the experience. And that is how I want to I want to make sure there's lots of invitations to continue the process, but I don't want you to feel like you're being corralled and pushed through these steps and stages if they aren't right for you.
Right. You're being given the agency again of authenticity. You're being given the agency of choice. You
Right.
know, and that's another thing actually that I really love about your approach. And I wish that more marketers would, or more business owners and more marketers really would take this approach, which is, you are not holding anything back. Like, you're not making people go to your $200 like pop-up mastermind. You're not making people go to the mastermind in order to find out what the next step is.
Right.
You're not hiding anything. You're not the Wizard of Oz. Like, look behind the curtain if you want to see a thing. You're like, this is the whole shebang. Like, this is what I've got. What fits for you? Like, what works for you? Like, let's just go with that. And you're open to starting anybody at any point, because it's what they need and what they want.
You
And
know,
I love that. Like, it boils down to, you are providing all the information necessary for folks to make an informed opinion that benefits them, not you.
I had this realization also when I was trying to sell people into a group program. I think my first time, it was years ago. I had done a pilot and I was trying to move people into the second iteration, and I got all these people checking out the sales page. And this is partly why I knew I wanted some help from you, Anne, is like translating what I say into copy wasn't my strong suit, although I feel I'm much more confident with my writing skills now. But I think 250 people went to the sales page, but no one clicked the button to schedule a call with me. But meantime, all these people were scheduling chats with me to ask if I could help them with all these other types of things. They weren't signing up for the program that I had laid out for them, but they understood that I can help them in some way. And they were asking to pick my brain or can I help them with this. And I started creating these little like one-off, 4-session coaching packages with podcast launches and book launches. And someone was like, I have this idea for a community. How do I get? And then I realized, oh, I need to rebrand what I'm offering to make it clear that that is actually what we're doing in this group. And then I went back and was able to actually fill the program with those same people who turns out they were all entrepreneurial women in their 50s and beyond. And that's how I started to understand who my ideal clients even were. So I think even then I'm realizing if I was too specific about this is the only way to work with me, then people think, oh, there's nothing else. I mean, another time I was trying to sell a group coaching program with someone and she interrupted to say, like, do you do one-on-one? Because like right now, I don't want to wait and go with everyone else. Like, I just want to get started and I want to go fast. And so if everything I've laid out is not for you and you want to think of some other thing that I'm not offering, that's fine too. A la carte and, buyer's choice. Like, I'm happy to kind of be creative about meeting you where you are and helping you further along the journey, and if we have to make a bespoke experience to kind of nail down exactly what you need, like, let's have that conversation. Reach out to me. Let's find out how we can do it. I want to offer, this is going to be a kind of a funny thing because it doesn't really work perfectly, but this is, well, here, I'm going to put myself on here. Hold on a second. Here we go.
It's me.
Yeah, it's you. It's you. Okay. This is a testimonial from Melissa Smith. I now have these beautiful audiograms. I'm just going to share this.
No one in my life has ever said that someone should not get everything they need from a webinar. No one ever. And I was like, what? I'm supposed to leave them with the problem? Like, what? Like, this is groundbreaking, mind blowing. Like huge.
And I love Melissa to death, like so much. And her Association of Virtual Assistants is like probably if it's not my top referral, it's my top 2. I think it's like her and my podcast editor are probably the 2 people I constantly am referring out to.
Oh my God.
So Melissa went through the 2-hour program. She is successful. She's a person who's already got it. She sort of said yes almost as a favor to me to like be like, oh, fine, you're launching your book. I'll come do your little program. And that was her reaction, right? She was like, whoa, I didn't realize that I didn't have to give everything away in this webinar, that I need to actually leave people realizing there's more to the problem, that they need to seek out additional support. That's the kind of, oh, wow, mind-blowing things that you can get just for 2 hours plus the pre-work time. I'm hoping people will sign up because it's this Monday is the sign-up deadline.
Great.
We have one time slot that's currently confirmed, and it's actually going to be great for people who are either night owls on the East Coast or or like me, or people who are in Australia. We've got a couple people from Australia who've signed up. And so it's going to be in the evening on a Thursday in June. But we have a couple other time slots that we can fill. Again, we're maxing the number of seats, but there needs to be 4 people in a time slot for it to take off. So I'm hoping people will check out the application. I put it in the comments. I'll go back and make sure it happens in all the other places this is being shared to right now. Come check us out. And anything you want to close with?
I just want to say that I love your approach. I really do want to underscore that. I think your approach is so fantastic. And I think it really is a testament to who you are as a person and how you actually put the needs of the folks that you help at the forefront, which is something that I tremendously value. And I value because it puts humanity at the center of it. And one of the things that really struck out to me as we've been talking, and especially as you said it here, is even if like you have all of these different ways in which you can come in,
Right.
right? But even if all of the different options that you have don't work, you're like, just let me know what you need. Let's
Yeah.
come up with a bespoke solution. And let me point out, this is actually one of the benefits of not just having a defined program, but also being an entrepreneur. You get to do these things. You get to be like, I have these very defined things. You're able, you want to slot into one of those, cool. If not, how can I help you? Like, if you want to work together, but the thing that I have doesn't work, how can I help?
I mean, there's this one person last year I met with several times. We worked on their PowerPoint presentation, worked on their virtual presentation skills to help them figure out their technology. You know, they had a big opportunities for speaking and they needed to nail it. They needed to feel really confident. And for me, I'm not about all the fancy gadgetry. I try to help people get better using what the tools they already have access to and are already somewhat familiar with. And so that's what they needed. They didn't need 12 weeks of a program. They needed some time and they needed some practice. They needed some confidence. They need some pointers and feedback. And and then we met again after to talk about how do they leverage that speaking opportunity for other ones. So, because to me, it's not just I'm going to be training you. I'm always going to be thinking about the strategy for selling more. Like for me, it's like a little bit of both. I'll get in the weeds around the tech, but I'm always thinking, well, how do we position you as the market go-to person for your thing? And I can't wait to support people. My biggest joy is other people's success. I want to be there cheering you on. I want to celebrate the wins. And yours too. Congratulations on getting placed at an amazing organization, Random Penguin House. Penguin Random House.
No, we're calling it Random Penguin House now. It's where do you work? I work at the Random Penguin House.
Yeah, it's random.
It's just real random. It's over there.
By the way, that would be really funny if you had actually told us that and we all got excited and then it turned out it was really some like spoof company.
It was me going to work at the zoo at the penguin enclosure. Where do you work? At the Random Penguin House?
No. Penguin Random House. Congratulations, VP.
Thank you. It's such a joy. But again, what I do there is I am the VP of growth marketing there. Right. And a huge part of what I do is this humanizing of a thing, right? Like my primary concern is how do we reach readers on a human level? Because that's really what we're trying to do. Just like what you are trying to do is how do I reach people on a human level to grow their businesses? The fire that they have, the little match that they have, how do we turn it into a giant bonfire? And that's what you're doing. And that's why I'm like, God, I love this. It is, I don't know. It's just such an indication of who you are and what you want to do. Oh my God.
Pay is giving you some penguins.
Random Penguin House to the rescue.
Awesome. Bye, everybody. We're going to cut this off before I make any more faux pas. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Paya. Thank you, everyone else who's watching. I'd love you to comment and chat so I know you were here. Cheers.